I'm going to convene the November 23rd, 2020 Single Family Design Board. May I have roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. This is Mary. I will go ahead and take the roll call. We have Chair Miller,
Here.
Board Member Farrell,
Here.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Here.
Board Member Sweeney,
Here.
and Board Member Ziegler is here, but he has technical difficulties, so I'll get back to him. And Board Member James is absent today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to general business, item A, public comment. Anyone from the public may address the board up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. Do we have anyone that would like to speak, or emails? Ted?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And at this time, we'd like to open up the floor for public comment for items not on today's agenda. So if you're attending the meeting and you'd like to speak on something that's not on the agenda, now is your opportunity. Go ahead and click the hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak. And the instructions are shown on screen. Meanwhile, I'll check with Mary to see if we received any written public correspondence.
Thank you, Ted. We did not receive any general written public comment.
Okay, thank you, Mary. And I don't see any hands raised for general public comment, so I think we can go ahead and move on. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ted. On to item B, approval of the minutes for the Single Family Design Board for November 9th, 2020. May I have a motion for approval, please?
I move to approve.
Okay, Jan, and do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Jonathan? Wait, I think Jonathan raised his hand first.
Oh, okay.
May we go through the items, please? Item 1, amendments to the grading ordinance, where Andrew Stuffler came and gave us a talk about that. It was very informative. Item 2, 1402 Grand Avenue. Item 3, 3218 Kai Pinon.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
as I said a minute ago, I did go through and watch all the minutes. I'm going to abstain from voting on approval of the minutes. But just to let you know, I know that house intimately. That's where my son's godparents live. That's where I had his baptism. He's there backwards and forwards. So, but it is a little bit challenging, and I saw your struggle about trying to understand what was going on. So I certainly appreciate it. And,
All right,
and also to Mr. Struffle's presentation, even though I missed it, I really appreciated you all had great questions. Yeah, the same questions I covered. I attended the public meetings when that was going through the ordinance process. So I'm glad he came and explained it to you. So I thought that was pretty important, and I think we understand a little bit better now what we're looking at when we're having to deal with grading questions. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Fred. Appreciate that. So let's see, where were we at with the items? I think we went to now, Fred, when you were talking about the sorry, we kind of messed up here. You're talking about item 2, is that correct, Fred?
No, Canyon Pinon, which I think was your last item.
Okay, it was?
Yeah, that's what you stopped on.
Yeah, okay, got it. Is that the last item on their agenda? Okay, great. May I have roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. This is Mary. I will go ahead and take the roll call vote. We have Chair Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Abstention?
and Board Member Ziegler. All right, and Board Member Ziegler's hand raise is an approval for the record. The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Moving on to item C, approval of the consent calendar for November 16th. May I have a motion for approval, please?
I make that motion.
All right, thank you, Joe. Do I have a second? Jonathan? Okay, thank you. Ted, could you go through the items, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So item A was 138 Santa Rosa Place, and the motion was for project design approval and final approval with comments. Item B was 15 East Los Olivos Street, and the motion was for final approval as submitted. And item C, 1611 Loma Street. The motion was for final approval with a comment. And the reviewers were Roberts and Richard, or Millards. I'm sorry. Wow.
I know I
Who's
do that
the-
too.
Misspeak there. It's the reviewers were Miller and Richards.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
All right, this is Mary. We'll go ahead and take the roll call vote. We have Chair Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Mr. Ziegler. All right, and Board Member Ziegler's hand raise is an approval for the record, and the motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to today's consent calendar for November 23rd. May I have a motion for approval, please?
I make that motion.
Thank you, Joe. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jen. Ted, could you go through the items, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item A was 595 Sycamore Vista Road, and the motion was to continue indefinitely to the staff hearing officer with comments. Item B was 275 LC Alito Road. The motion was for project design approval and final approval with comments. And the last item was 2928 Ariba Way, and the motion was for project design approval with comments. And the reviewers were Miller and Richards.
All right, thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
All right, this is Mary. I will go ahead and take the roll call vote. We have Chair Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Board Member Ziegler. All right, and Mr. Ziegler's hand raise is an approval for the record, and with that, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals for agenda items and appeals. Do we have anything of that nature, Ted? I have one quick announcement, just in case.
I can report that there are no announcements from staff at this time. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say, Cher, I just got this book in the mail. I shared it. It's a book on Spanish farmhouses and public buildings by Windsor Soul, who is a very prominent architect in Santa Barbara in the early part of last century. It's an original print. I'm really excited about it. It was actually a book used quite a bit for reference for designing the courthouse, and I think Julia Morgan even had a copy she used to reference Hearst Castle. But I actually found this one picture of a building in Spain, and you can see the detailing that looks very similar to what they used in the courthouse. So I don't know, that was kind of exciting for me to have this kind of book. So anyway, that's my announcement.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of personal announcements.
Yes,
One
please.
is I really wanted to attend that meeting on the 9th to hear Mr. Stuffler. Unfortunately, my brother and I spent the last week of my father's 92-year-old life. He passed away on the Wednesday following that meeting, so I wasn't able to be there, but I really wanted to. And then secondly, I had a conversation last week with administrative staff from the city who brought to my attention my behavior. And so I want to publicly apologize to staff, particularly to Ted and to Mary. You're doing a wonderful job. And I know it's sometimes I come off with a raised voice, a tone of language that's probably not acceptable, et cetera. So I'm going to try to work better at it. But Mr. Chair, you can slap my hand anytime you think it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. I'm sorry to hear about your father, and I highly regard your expertise and knowledge in architecture. So, you know, it's a passionate profession, and if anyone thinks otherwise, they're mistaken. And being on this board, as you and I have for as long as we have, we definitely see a lot of emotion being expressed and just the nature of the beast. But thank you, and appreciate that for saying that, Fred. Thank you. So moving on, I don't think we have any subcommittee reports, right, Ted?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. No subcommittee reports.
Okay, so I'd like to move on to the items. We have item number 1. It's a continued item. It's a concept review, 691 North Hope Avenue. Proposal for a new 6-lot subdivision for a future single-family residential development on a 2-acre lot in the county of Santa Barbara. So I'm going to stop real quick. It says county of Santa Barbara. Sorry, Ted. Is that right? Oh, well,
Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct. This is an annexation. So it's a proposed, annexation for a development. And we'll talk about the scope of review after you read the project description. Both the case planner and I will have several clarifying comments.
Okay, great. Thank you. Project includes demolition of one existing single-unit residence, construction of a new public road, utility and infrastructure improvements, and 1,641 square yards of cut and 2,299 cubic yards of fill. No new residential structures are currently proposed. Project requires approval by the Planning Commission of the street frontage modification and tentative subdivision map, and approval by the City Council for annexation of the 2-acre lot from the County of Santa Barbara to the City of Santa Barbara. A general plan amendment and a zoning map amendment. No final appealable action will be taken at this hearing. Project requires neighborhood preservation findings and grading findings. The project was last reviewed September 30th, 2019. Do we have a representative for this project, please?
Yeah, hi, this is Tony Tomasello, Senior Planner with RRM Design Group.
Hello, Mr. Tomasello, if you'd like to, well.
Actually, Chair Miller, this is Kathy Kennedy. I'm the case planner on the project. I'd like to just give a brief intro.
Please.
So some of you may recall back in September 30th of 2019, if you were on the board, that this project was brought before you for just a concept review of the proposed subdivision. There were no residences proposed at that time, but you reviewed the layout of the subdivision and the new public proposed road. And at that point, there were many concerns about drainage and some other concerns about traffic and circulation and safety. And your comments were passed along to the Planning Commission. And then on October 17th of 2019, the Planning Commission did approve the project. They addressed all the drainage issues and approved the preliminary drainage and grading plan, and also incorporated some conditions of approval into the project as well to deal with the drainage issues. And I bring this up because you did receive a number of public comment letters today, and a few of them did bring up the same issues that were brought up previously and that were already addressed at the Planning Commission hearing. So the Planning Commission did approve the project, and then it went to City Council, who then approved the annexation and the general plan amendment and zoning map amendment. And currently the project is at LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, for the final step in the annexation. So it's still in the county of Santa Barbara, but the next step would be the approval of the annexation from LAFCO. And like I just said, that's pending. And while that is pending, the applicant wanted to bring forward on a conceptual level the proposed residences for this new subdivision. And that concludes my overview, and I'm available if any other questions come up later during the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. And Mr. Chair, I have several supplemental comments as well, just to try to direct your review today. So as Ms. Kennedy said, this project is returning to SFDB for a concept review. The residences will return individually for project design approval and final approval. So now at this hearing, the applicant is seeking an overview of, comments on an overview of the project. So They would like comments on the overall site design, architectural style, colors and materials, and some preliminary comments on the size, bulk, and scale would be appreciated. But keep in mind and there will be an opportunity for review of the size of the homes and FAR later on in project design approval. And if you have any questions along the way about the process, please let staff know. Thank you.
Thank you. So Tony, if you'd like to kind of go through the project, kind of refresh us, I guess.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you to Kathy and Ted for providing that overview. That's a lot of what I was personally going to kind of recap as we started this. I'm also joined here today by Debbie Pikert, principal with our office, as well as Gordon Brewer, our design director, who will talk a lot more about the actual design of the homes. But just in terms of our process, as Kathy had mentioned, we have the subdivision and annexation approved now by Planning Commission and City Council. Awaiting LAFCO approval and some of those formalities with the tax exchange agreement between the county and city and et cetera. So, but in the meantime, while that is taking place, we wanted to come back to Single Family Design Board to start looking at potential concepts for the general and overarching direction for the residences. And again, each of those will come forward individually. We've got a lot of work to do to refine these things as we move forward. But we're excited to start the conversation here with you all today about the residencies themselves. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it to Debbie. And Ted, if you could, we may be able to just go over to the other PDF that we've got. And if there's any questions about the subdivision, the drainage, or anything else related to that, I'm more than happy to jump in and help answer those questions.
Thank you, Tony and Chair Miller, board members. We really appreciate the opportunity to kind of share with you our thinking about the overall project design, as we've moved forward through the process up to this point. One of the things I want to mention is that we took good care to study the neighborhood preservation ordinances, and wanted to just point out that all of the homes are less than the 100% allowable floor area ratio. So that's what this first page here indicates. If you go to the next page, please. This is a floor plan, or I should say a site plan showing each of the floor plans as they're situated on the 6 lots. And we can come back to this and study it in more detail if needed. Next slide, please. This is a slide that I think is very important because what it does is it shows what we refer to as the figure ground, or the actual footprints on the ground of each of these lots that the homes take up. A number of the homes are actually single story, but some of the homes have a partial second story, and we'll kind of get into a little bit more detail on that. But I think the important thing to underscore here with this slide is just how the pattern that we're proposing for the development of these lots, which range in size from approximately 9,000 square feet to just over 14,000 square feet. And you can see that the surrounding homes have a very similar kind of development pattern as what we're proposing here for these homes. Next slide, please. This is just the actual subdivision layout, and you can see again what I was mentioning a moment ago. The size of the lots varies. Lot 6 is what, 13,700. Lot 1, 14,000 being the largest of the lots, and then these intermediate lots range in size from 9,000, approximately in the 9,000 square foot range. And each of these lots is kind of terraced down because the site slopes to the west here, to the low point kind of in the middle here, and then for lot 6 as well. Next slide. So these are just some photographs. They're keyed to this aerial view. And you can see number 1 photo is, of the lower end of the lot, the westerly end. Number 2 shows the existing residence that will be removed. And you can see a little glimpse of the existing Penn Place lane. And then where the driveway enters the property for the existing home, that will be the new public road entrance. And then the other photos just show other aspects of the site, other views of the site. You can kind of see where it slopes down towards the west. Next slide. So this is an overall street view of the slide and of the proposed residences. And as you'll see, one of the things that was very important to us and the Yao family, Jervis Yao happens to be, I think, hopefully he'll be able to join us and speak himself for a minute or two as well. But he lives just around the corner, and he acquired this property along with his parents with the intention of building a home for himself, which would be the first lot number 1. And then his parents are also building a home for themselves. I believe that's lot 5 right at the moment, or lot 6. It hasn't been fully determined yet. So the family really wanted these homes designed to be kind of compatible with their desires for a more contemporary styled home. And we really felt strongly, both the owners and us as architects, that we would like to create a subdivision of these 6 homes that had kind of a consistent theme around the idea of these contemporary homes that reflect the sort of Mediterranean character of our community, but in a contemporary way, by using white stucco, massing, and stone veneers and wood treatments throughout. But you'll see that each of these homes really is a unique and individual expression. Now, they all have flat roofs, and one of the reasons for that is that we're really interested in ultimately creating homes that could meet net zero energy standards at some point in the future by creating as much space for photovoltaic panels as possible, while at the same time not impacting kind of the aesthetics of the design with exposed solar panels on sloped roofs, et cetera. So we want to maximize that ability by having these flat roofs. And I think ultimately creating a kind of timeless character for these homes that create this kind of playful massing movement within each of the homes, and a kind of layering effect of how the masses relate to one another. So that was kind of our concept here, and we're very excited about it. We really feel like these homes are going to be a very beautiful and elegant addition to the property. I want to point out while we're looking at this elevation that, again, there are some 2-story homes that are partially 2-story with 1-story elements, and a couple of homes that are all 1-story, number 2 and 3. And then the rest of the homes have a partial 2nd story. Okay, next slide. And one thing I did want to point out here is that, again, of course, 2-story homes are allowed. The maximum height is somewhere in the 24 to 25 foot range for the highest portions of those roofs and parapets. But because we're not utilizing sloped roofs, they actually have a very kind of low-key character, and they would be significantly less sort of impactful with respect to their height by virtue of the fact that we're utilizing these flat roofs for ultimate solar panel installations. But you can see in this aerial view that right immediately adjacent to the site, there are a number of homes that are also 2-story. So this is not inconsistent with the neighborhood. There are two-story homes scattered around the neighborhood. And again, the height is certainly consistent with the requirements of the zoning ordinance. So move on to the next slide. This is a perspective view that of a view that you would see if you were coming in off of Hope Street, and you see lot number 1, which would be the Yao residence. And again, there is a portion that's 2-story, but we kind of step it back from the street, and that same sort of step back concept you'll see is consistent with the other homes down the street. But again, it gives you the sense of the character that we're trying to create, a kind of contemporary Mediterranean style using these natural materials of stucco, stone, and wood, with lots of some low walls in the frontage and planters and, of course, street trees. And then central in this rendering, of course, is the existing oak tree, which we will be preserving. Next slide. So I want to turn it over to Gordon, who's our design director, and he'll talk a little bit more about the contemporary design style and character and where our inspiration came from, et cetera. Go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Yeah, we're in about 5 minutes left, so we'll try and make this quick. We drew inspiration, again, for these houses from some of the timeless work of Irving Gill, who is a prominent architect about 50 or so years ago in or a little more than that, in Southern California. But his work really combines the strong massing concepts of the rectilinear plaster forms, some corner windows. He used wood to keep them nice and warm in an aesthetic manner, natural materials, stone. And so we really relied a lot on his style and his sensitivity to keeping timeless buildings, basically, that respond to the local context. And there are, in addition, several throughout San Roque. I live in San Roque, and there's a lot of 30s and 40s flat roof Spanish colonial bungalows or cottages, and I think we relate to those. There's one on Connie Street right behind us too, actually. So next slide.
Just Gordon, before you get into the designs, I was wondering if we may be able to ask Chair Miller to grant a little bit of an extension given the number of designs that we wanted to kind of describe to you today.
Sure. How much time do you need, do you think?
Maybe it's 5 minutes, I would say maybe.
Okay, that's fine.
We want to provide an opportunity for the owner, Jervis Yao, to say a couple of words too at the end. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay, this is the Yao residence right on Hope Street at the corner of Hope and our new street. You can see from the plan, there's the southern orientation is typically on all the plans. We opened up the outdoor space to the southern orientation. There's a generous setback there's a 10-foot easement, drainage easement along the southern border of all the lots. And then additionally, it's about 20 or 30 feet to the beginning of most of the residences. There's a few, like the garage or an element in here, this ADU that the owner is going to have for probably his parents to visit or people to visit. One of the things in all of these plans, the features that we have, there's generally a 2 master bedroom solution for multi-generational living. People can have their parents come and live with them instead of having to go to another living facility. There's also a desire especially with the conditions we're in now, and possibly, we don't know how long, for people to be able to have space to work at home. And that's a general trend that's kind of, it's here now, and it's likely to be here, we feel, so that these houses have the age-in-place capabilities, and they have capabilities for working at home. The houses are mostly oriented east to west, so that they have, again, the southern exposure to the south for nice, warm community living. And they also try and take advantage of the mountain views from the north, and especially when possible to have views through the house to keep that feeling of openness and connectivity through the north and then out to the south. So go to the next slide. This is, again, you can see that there's a minimal second story. It's about I'd call it a story and a half, probably, in terms of the volume and bulk and mass and scale of that second story. And so they're predominantly one story with a story and a half. A couple of them are story and a half, and at least two of the houses are solely one story. Next slide. These are the elevations. At the bottom it would be the view from Hope Street. And you can see that it's very simple massing, metal windows and metal used for these sunshades, a little wood to warm the composition up, and just again, simple massing. The elevation on the top would be the elevation from our new street. Again, a little playfulness with the massing to define the entrance. Natural materials, the stone planters, a little stone building, and stucco massing. And some wood to warm on the garage door in this case, to again warm the composition up. Next slide. This is lot number 2. It has, again, the southern exposure. We're showing pools just not because everybody's going to build a pool, but just to show that demonstrate there's space to allow for a pool to be built. So it's not a given that everybody's going to build a pool. Again, this has the southern orientation. It has an entrance forecourt that allows, again, that connectivity to the mountain views and the neighborhood, basically, along the street, the sense of community we're trying to create. And again, the openness and expansiveness to the south. Next slide. These are the elevations. Lot 2, again, you can see it's very low-key building with simple rectangular masses. In this case, where we had a corner window, which is kind of a contemporary element, we put a 10 by 10 wood column there instead of something steel, again, to keep it a little more in the Santa Barbara kind of warm Mediterranean tradition. And there's a wood trellis, wood on the garage door, wood on the gate, and little stone planters and a little stone. The bottom elevation, you can see this, that's the south elevation. It has a metal canopy to provide the shade without adding a whole lot of columns. And again, there's some metal in the windows and doors and the sunshade devices. Next slide. This is lot 3. It's basically a similar or almost identical floor plan to lot 2, but the massing has been articulated a little differently. Next slide. So this is, you can see the massing is different, articulated differently than lot 2. This was a little challenging because this is where the steepest part of the site slopes. So the garage was placed on the downhill side there. That was one thing we had to really look closely at. Again, it's very similar, but it's got its own character and blends in. We had a little more stone in this case around the garage. And because there were several places on this site because of the steep slope where we needed to have some retaining walls. So we thought this house felt like it might want to be a little more solid, I guess. Next slide. This is lot 4. This is on the curve of the cul-de-sac there. So it was a little challenging to get everything to fit in that little triangular space left over. Like all the other houses, it has the generous exposure to the south, with community space facing south. And some of the bedrooms have really a nice corner window and some mountain views to the north. Next slide. Once again, you can see the limited second story portion compared to the mass of the house. Very compact master bedroom with the corner window and the really beautiful mountain views and a balcony off the master bedroom to exploit those views. Next slide. Yeah, these are the elevations. You can see the balcony. And again, we have some warm wood material on the balcony, a little playfulness with the color to showcase the massing, the metal sunshades and the metal windows. The bottom elevation is, again, the south-facing elevation with a nice, generous sunshade marquee there without columns so that the space will be uninterrupted and easy to access. Very expansive openings again to the interior space. Next slide. Lot 5 is similar to Lot 4, but the geometry of that site dictated that we have a little angularity introduced in the great room space or the common space, and which gave us a nice opportunity to really exploit the mountain views to the north in that living room and open up to the south in the community area in the south. Next slide. Once again, you'll see the second story is, about half of the mass of the house. Not really all that. It's not a full 2-story house, I guess is the point. And this again has a nice kind of a secondary master bedroom, perhaps, with some nice mountain views. Next slide. Massing, again, just a composition of the rectilinear forms, a little playfulness with the color, the natural materials with a stone wall, wood, metal windows, metal sunshade devices, just like the rest of the houses. And as we develop this, we may decide to get a little individualization with the use of color to differentiate the houses a little bit more from one another. But stylistically, the massing and the palette of materials will be consistent throughout. Next slide. And this is Lot 6. This is was kind of at the end of the cul-de-sac. It has an easement or a driveway across the north side and a little entrance forecourt, again open to the south. Space for a little mother-in-law cottage, if you will, on the southwest corner. Generous porch, very compact house, leaving room for a possible pool, not necessarily. Next slide. Once again, the mass of the second story is stepped back, and from the approach, which is you can see from the cul-de-sac on the right, you can see that there's a 1-story element with the garage, and the house is set back from that, so it's not going to be really intrusive. In this case, there's a drainage easement along the west too, so there's a generous setback from the west boundary as well as the south. You can see how much space there is there. Next slide. And the last set of elevations, again, just showing the rectilinear massing. Again, a little playfulness. This has this long, tall window there is in the stairwell. It has a wood column. Again, instead of a really obviously contemporary modern metal column, we've tried to keep things warm with a little touches of wood here and there. And it has the stone planters and simple stucco massings. The particular one has an indoor-outdoor fireplace too. So I think that just about does it for the massing of the design concepts.
Thanks, Gordon, and thanks, Chair Miller, for allowing us a little bit of extra time. And I'll just conclude by saying, we're very excited about the project. We really feel that the design, reflects that kind of Santa Barbara character, but in a very, contemporary manner. And the idea that the homes have that similar kind of thematic character is something that we're really interested in creating, because we wanted to create the sense of a little village that had that kind of consistent character. I want to just mention one other thing, is that the setbacks from the property line to the south are they average around 30 feet. Now, some of the there are some 1-story elements that are a little bit closer, but none of the 2-story elements are much closer than 30 feet. In some cases, significantly more than that. And there's a 10-foot drainage easement, which is really outside of the building envelope. So yeah, that concludes our presentation, but I did want to give Jervis Yao, the owner of the property, just a minute to quickly introduce himself so that you know who he is and know how he has kind of guided us in developing the design. Jervis?
Good afternoon, board members, and thank you for allowing me to introduce myself as a representative for our family. My name is Jervis Yao, and I live here in Santa Barbara. We acquired this property about 3 years ago with the idea of building my parents' home there. I live a block away from this property with my wife and 3 kids who are all current students at Monte Vista Elementary across the street. So therefore, we love this neighborhood and we are fortunate and also looking very forward to the opportunity of building some homes to add value to the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Yao. Bring it back to the board. Ted, did we get any public comment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, we'd like to open up the floor for public comment on this item. So if you are an attendee and you'd like to give verbal public comment, now's your opportunity. Please click the hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel as shown on screen. And I will call on you and you'll get 2 minutes to speak. And after we do verbal public comment, we'll acknowledge any written public comment. So Brian Costa, I'm going to click on you. Okay, you're unmuted and you have to click your microphone and then you can speak. And when you begin speaking, your 2-minute timer will start.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Costa. I'm the owner of the adjacent home, one of the adjacent homes on Connie Way. And I just want to follow up on my written comments I submitted earlier today in opposition of the proposed architectural plans for 691 North Hope. My wife, myself, and 17 homeowners on Connie Way and Rolling Brook Lane signed a letter this morning asking the board to reject this concept and provide the adjacent community more time to respond and potentially meet with RR&M. I think it's important to put on record that at the beginning of this project, RR&M told adjacent residents that first no homes were planned and that if homes were built, they would be 1 story and less than 2,000 square feet. This plan, though, is a dramatic departure from this expectation and proposes large 2-story modern homes that in no way fit the character of the surrounding community. RR&M, I think, failed to mention that only 2 homes on Connie Way have 2 stories. 12 of them are single story and none of them are modern. And the same is true with homes on White Rose and Hope Terrace, which are just nearby. I think the optics of this change, unfortunately, it just gives the appearance that RR&M provided this information to minimize the conflict and pushback so that this proposal would be approved. I think this development will undeniably impact the view sheds and the privacy of homeowners that have lived on Connie Way for 20, 30, and even 40 years in some cases. And I and the 17 members on Connie and Rolling Brook urge the board to reject this proposed concept. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. And if we have anybody else who would like to speak, now is the opportunity. I don't see any other hands raised at this point. So Mary, could you please confirm whether we do have one person who raised their hand. Sharon McKenzie, I'm going to unmute you. You'll have 2 minutes to speak once you click your microphone and begin speaking.
Hi, this is Doug McKenzie. Sharon and I live on the west end, one of the homes on Rolling Brook Lane, and I would just add, there was a lot of mention about the beautiful mountain view, and where I'm sitting now, looking out, our mountain view is to the east, and I'm not sure exactly where in the process things are about particular buildings, if that comes up later on. But I think that we are concerned about what would happen to our mountain view. I think in the design, I appreciate that you guys had done a lot of work to address some of the privacy issues. We noticed there are just a few windows facing in our direction, and that you have tried to mitigate some of those concerns. But we still feel like maybe there's going to be a significant impact to us in that specific. And so like I said, I'm not sure where in the process we address some of those more specific concerns about particular buildings and that sort of thing, but we do have some concerns there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And not seeing any additional hands raised, just ask Mary if we received any written public correspondence.
Thank you, Ted. We did receive several emails that were distributed to the board before the meeting. We received a few emails from Brian and Nikki Costa, correspondence from Matthew Scribner, Hitch McDermott and Joan Sullivan, Polly and Mike Martoni, and lastly, Doug McKenzie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. And I don't see any additional hands raised. So Mr. Chair, back to you.
All right, thank you very much. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. I will just go down the list. First one on my list is Jan Farrell. Do you have any questions, please?
I don't have any questions right now, Brian.
All right, thank you. Board member Mokisha, do you have any questions, please? And if you can all bring your cams on, please, that'd be great.
I'm on now. No, at this point, no, I don't have any questions. I think that I'll wait for comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Richards, do you have any comments, please? Or questions, sorry.
I guess in regards to the landscape, has there been any thought in terms of how that's going to be addressed, or kind of too preliminary in your stages in terms of like choices of plant materials and whatnot?
Thank you, board member Tony Tomasello. The landscaping in the parkway and the public areas, that has been developed at least at the schematic level at this point, in coordination with the city staff, just in terms of the street trees and you know, areas for those parkways, that type of thing. As far as the landscaping on the residences, have some existing trees on the site. For example, the large oak tree shown there at lot 1 is anticipated to remain. That is on the private property. There's a couple others if we were looking a little bit closer at that. And another one, basically, we would anticipate something that's in keeping with the MLO requirements, really along the lines of you know, this kind of Mediterranean trout style.
So is that existing oak tree that is identified on your site plan, is that the only tree on the site, or are any trees having to be displaced?
There's other trees on lot 6 that will remain, and it may be better to look at the subdivision plans for that. There's a landscape plan included in that shows exactly which trees are being removed and which trees are being retained.
Okay.
So you can see there on the west side, there's a number of oaks in that kind of northwest corner that will be retained along that property line. There are 2 existing oaks between lots 4 and 5 that will be retained. And then there are a stand of 3 oaks that are kind of just on the north side of the new proposed road that will be in that kind of small parkway area between this road and the adjacent Penn Place.
Okay. I guess that answers my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Board member Sweeney, questions, please.
Oops, am I on? I think I'm back on. Okay,
Yes.
I'd like to start with the, there are a few granny units referred to in the presentation. Are those going to be permitted as ADU units and not have our purview? Is that the intent? We know.
The lot 6 has a freestanding ADU unit that is included with our included in the presentation. And when we do come back for review of each of these individual lots, that will be obviously highlighted. Lot 1 has an ADU that is effectively attached to the garage, which is separated from the main house. Here's the view of lot 6 with the ADU located lower southwest corner there.
Okay, thank you. And then with regards to FARs, and I know we're going to look at those when we see the individual, when we start reviewing the lots individually. But
Yes.
you mentioned that they're all under 100%. How many are close to 85%? Are most of them close to 85%, or are they larger than that? I forgot to go look at the detail on your drawing. Sorry.
Most of them are closer to 100%. They're in the 90s.
They range from 90 to high 90s.
Okay, thank you. And then I did look at all the planning commission documents, both the ordinance, or excuse me, the resolution and the minutes, but I didn't go back and look at the actual meeting on the video. Was there a discussion about the definition of neighborhood at the planning commission hearing? Perhaps somebody, Ms. Kennedy, can tell us, did they define the neighborhood when they discussed the resolution? Do we know?
Chair Miller and board members, we did not have a discussion regarding the neighborhood that I recall. And I'm expecting you're thinking how this fits in with being compatible with the neighborhood.
Yes, correct. In other words, if the planning commission had a resolution, because it's in the resolution, if you read it, there's a lot of references to neighborhood areas. I just wondered if they had actually defined what they thought the neighborhood would be. So, because I know when we come to our decision-making process, we generally have to define the neighborhood. Okay, thank you. Let's see. The other question I had, and I did submit some questions earlier today to Kathy and Ted. In general, the public views from Connie Way and other adjacent streets and neighborhoods are public views from the public right-of-way, not the collective amalgamation of the individual homes along those streets. Is that correct?
Chair Miller and board members, yes. So this isn't really a significant public view area along Connie Way, but we didn't look at that from a public view standpoint. You'd be looking at just, private views from the neighborhood and not as a public view corridor.
And as I understand it, most of the time we've asked that question. The city attorney's office says that from individual properties, we're not to make decisions based on views from individual properties or windows or locations on patios or et cetera, correct?
That's correct, yes.
But we do try to pay attention to privacy issues, correct?
Yes, and you do have your good neighbor guidelines that you can refer to as well.
Okay. Let's see. I think that answers my basic questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Board Member Ziegler, can we hear you? I can't hear you.
Board Member Ziegler, Mr. Chair, if you tried turning up the volume on your audio setup, that might help. Otherwise, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to hear you at this meeting. I apologize. We still can't hear you.
Well, how about if I'll ask my questions and maybe get back to Jonathan. I just have a couple of questions. The plate heights, what were the plate heights were you thinking of for these homes?
The plate heights that we're considering for the ground floor would be 10 feet. So the ground floor, common area spaces would have a 10-foot ceiling, basically. The upper level bedrooms would have a 9-foot plate, 9-foot ceilings on the upper level.
All right, thank you. That was my only question at the moment. I take it Jonathan's still in silence. Ed?
That's correct, Chair Miller. We've been tried to work it out, but could not find a solution.
Can he text his question or comment or?
Oh, there you go. Is that,
The
can you do
chat?
that? That's a good idea. Jonathan, can you do that? So it says, wondering about two-story building heights?
Yeah,
That which,
I mentioned that before. The two-story heights are approximately 25 feet maximum. Some of them will be a little bit lower depending on the parapet height and, you know, our effort to kind of differentiate the massing, et cetera, and layering that. But that is, you know, the maximum two-story height, 25 feet.
thank you. Any other questions, Jonathan? Okay, I think you said no. Okay, let's move on to comments. So I'm going to go down the list again. And Board Member Farrell, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So first of all, I would just want to say that I like the idea to keep the homes consistent in design for this little neighborhood that you're developing. I am just not sure if this modern and contemporary approach is really appropriate for this neighborhood, which I consider Hope Avenue and Connie Way and those main streets there, which are predominantly ranch, craftsman, and Spanish Mediterranean. So you're introducing something that's just does not seem to be in keeping with the character of our city. That's my comment.
Thank you. Board Member Motisha, do you have any comments, please?
Yes. Sorry, John, I disagree with you. I own a house. I own a house in the area. I have owned a house in that area and still own it for 40 years. And most of those houses in the outer San Roque area were built in the 30s and the 40s, and they're all different. They're all different, and there have been several of the developments like this, and all those developments have all been different, from California Ranch to contemporary like this to thing. So I think this is a very nice development and fits the area very nice, because that whole outer area of San Roque, from State Street to Foothill, from Bishop Diego from 154 all the way back to Ontario Road, are all totally different houses. There's no one style there at all. And this looks very, very nice and fits our ideas that we try to push as a single family design board, all our criteria. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Richards, do you have any comments, please?
Yeah, I don't know, I'm a little torn on this one as well in terms of the approach of the styling. I mean, I personally appreciate this style of architecture, but not sure if it's appropriate for the area. I think in general, I'd say that the homes seem like they might be taller than they need to be. They seem to be very densely packed in, like they occupy a lot of the site. And your site plans seem very intense too, in terms of how much paved surface there is and the installation of swimming pools. So if there is the intent to have this much paved surface, I hope a lot of it's permeable surface. And I think the landscape is gonna come into play to work with these homes. So at the next level, I'd like to see a little bit more detail in terms of the landscape planting. Another comment is that the sidewalk is, I don't know if there's an opportunity to get a parkway between the road and the sidewalk. I think that would do a lot to help work with the development here. In your rendering, you show it. In the site plan, it doesn't show it. So I'm not sure what the actual intent is, but I'd really like to see a strip of planting there along the side of the road between the sidewalk and the road. So I guess that's kind of my take on it for now. I'm interested to hear what the other board members have to say. Thank you.
Brian, can I add something else before we continue? This is Joe speaking. I think Fred, you brought up the fact, I think it was you, about the 100% or what percentage of FARs. I think that it would be nice to bring the size of the masses of the houses down a little bit. I don't disagree with the ceiling heights of 10 feet and 9 feet, but I think the project deserves a little bit more landscaping and a little bit more side yards, rather than having the houses, the minimum between each other, and that's what this is practically.
Yeah, I agree with that, Joe.
Go ahead. I'm finished. Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you. Board Member Sweeney, do you have comments, please?
Yes, several. First of all, the approach to the architecture reminds me a little bit of what happened to my parents, or not my parents, but my great-grandparents' home in San Luis Obispo on Broad Street, where they tore down the brick house and put up houses, condos that look just like these. So that was my first response. But I'd like you, if we could we go back to the aerial photograph, the aerial photograph that was shown earlier in the presentation? No, the one that looked at the Google Earth, I think. The Google Earth map. Yeah, that one. So one of the things that troubles me about trying to figure out how we meet neighborhood compatibility is how we look at the architectural style of the general neighborhood. And so that's why defining the neighborhood is going to be, in my view, fairly important as we go along in this discussion. This neighborhood is the most caution of this, and a few homes that have already been pointed out by the applicant and by Mr. Modisha are all sloped roofs. They all have pitch roofs of some sort, either with Spanish tile or asphalt shingles, etc. So, and they're all generally ranch style. Yes, there's several two-story approaches, and yes, there's been as you go down Hope Avenue, there's been other projects where they've developed 4 or 5 homes or more on long, thin properties like this one. Those tend to be more traditional Spanish looking, etc. One of the sad things is our firm did Monte Vista School. In fact, I did the multi-purpose room at Monte Vista back when I was in the firm. And then unfortunately, after I left, the firm placed all of those very ugly looking sloped solar panels over the parking lot, which literally destroyed the architecture of the school. So for that, I apologize, but I had no control over it. So when I get to this project, I am concerned that this approach to contemporary architecture, trying to use Irving Gill as the stepping stone, in my view, we ought to leave Mr. Gill down in San Diego, where he was prevalent in his architecture in Long Beach and some other places south of Los Angeles, which are most appropriate. But I don't think adapting that approach to this architecture is appropriate. It's not, in my view, Santa Barbara. And this is the second time I've seen a local architect try to use Irving Gill as their inspiration. And I'm just not certain that Gill is the right guy to do that. I own several books of Gill's architecture. I admire it greatly, and I know Mr. Brewer is a very, very talented architect, and I can understand where he was coming from, but I just don't think placing this kind of architecture in this neighborhood is appropriate. I am concerned, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I am concerned about the FARs. I would like to see all of these homes closer to 85%. And in the ones that have ADU units on them, I'm going to demand that they be 85%, because part of the challenge is you don't get to count the ADU square footage in the FAR. And I've taken that position on several other projects that we've looked at across the city. If you want an ADU, that's great, that's fine. We don't review them, we can't say anything about them, but the main home better be at 85% or lower. So that I'm not going to move off of, in my opinion. Others may disagree on the board with me, but I think that's where we have to be. With regards to an architect that might give inspiration, and as pointed out by Mr. Motish and others, you know, a lot of these homes were built as ranch-style homes, particularly in the 1950s. That was a very big push in Southern California. A lot of homes were low slung ranch-style homes with slope roofs, and a lot of that came from a fellow by the name of Cliff May. This is a wonderful book. I'm sure Mr. Brewer has it. It shows a lot of examples. We were sitting at the table like we normally would historically. I would open and show the pages. They're hard to see, but Cliff May did some great things with ranch style, and we have several Cliff May homes out in Hope Ranch. I had a client that owns one right across from the lake in Hope Ranch. So I think one might look to Cliff May rather than Irving Gill as your inspiration. And maybe it's a combination of some pitched roofs and flat roofs. And the interesting thing about Cliff May is he did have slope roofs, and then he introduced a lot of skylights, and he had elements on those, and that could be dealt with also with solar panels. And so maybe there's a way to take his concepts about certainly he did a lot of single-story homes. But the other thing you'll find in Cliff Mays, yes, his first floor building heights or plate lines were pretty high, 10 feet, 12 feet, etc. But he had them up big open ceilings, cathedral kind of ceilings. So maybe it's a combination of a high ceiling plate height on the first floor for some of these homes, and then tucking in, and he did a few of these, where he tucked in second floors that really sank right down into the roof, and their plate heights were down at 8 feet. And windows were only exposed where they needed to for views and so forth, but they laid down in the pitch of the roof, of a sloped roof. And I think maybe that would be a better approach to this. The other thing is a lot of the colors of these homes in these neighborhoods, I've taken on a palette of those muted peach colors, tans and beiges, and so stark white may not be an appropriate approach in terms of color. And certainly the use of metal is also not probably appropriate. As mentioned, Gill did use wood. Cliff May used a lot of wood, heavy timber, etc. So in that point, I do agree that's important. The other thing I'm going to be looking for when these come back to look at individual sites is the privacy issues between these homes and the homes along Connie Way and elsewhere, understanding where their windows are and your windows. Maybe that can be explained by some fairly, rudimentary site sections between the two properties, so we understand how the views, privacy views, are dealt with. Unfortunately, as we talked about earlier in the presentation, this board isn't really allowed to look at the mountain views from the homes in Connie Way in a big public way, because it's from the public right of way, not from individual properties. So that's a little bit more of a challenge. So I think those are some of my thoughts. Certainly defining the neighborhood is going to be important, but I just don't think that this preliminary approach is appropriate, and I hope that helps Ms. Farrell and Mr. Richards perhaps on their thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Board Member Ziegler, have we overcome and conquered our technical problems?
He's written some notes in the chat box, Brian.
Okay, let's see. Oh, here we go. I like those homes, but agree with Jan's comments on the neighborhood. All right, thank you. All right, yeah, my comments are completely, it's what informs me of what I'm about to say is the already established neighborhood, and it's kind of a follow-up of what Fred said too. And also based on the letters we got from the neighbors that are a little uncomfortable, and in particular, the style of the architecture. I think the plate heights need to be reduced, as first off, not because they're wrong or bad, but because of the already established scale of the neighborhood and already size, bulk, and scale of the homes that are already in the surrounding environment. So it has to kind of play off of that. So I think the 10-foot plate height and the 9-foot plate height is a little too tall for this neighborhood. However, Fred brings up the point about Cliff May, and if there was some way of dancing it so that the size bulk would be a little less overpowering, because I think these homes, you're introducing a style that is new to this area, and the purview of this board is to but to maintain the quality of architecture and kind of be sympathetic with what's already there, because that's kind of why this board was created in the first place. So I feel that the style of this architecture is not quite compatible with the neighborhood. It's kind of interesting when you look at this particular drawing, introducing flat roofs, so it makes perfect sense in terms of hiding the solar panels, because nothing's uglier than a bunch of solar panels. And a person's going to be an ultra billionaire if they can figure out how to do two-piece mission tile solar panels. I think Elon Musk is sort of in that direction, but not yet. But anyway, the only other flat roofs in this area looks like the school up on the upper right-hand corner. So it kind of gives that commercial feel to it rather than home and residential. And based on the concern of the neighborhoods, and I don't know with COVID if story poles may perhaps be something talked about or considered as well. And I forgot to ask you, the material for the garage doors, were you thinking of those as being wood, or were they going to be opaque, translucent? I don't know if that was considered too. But those are my comments at this time. Thank you. So I think you're here for comments only. Is that correct?
That's correct. Mr. Chair, if I could, there was just a couple of comments that I may be helpful to respond to, just to try to continue the dialogue, because some of these were made for specific reasons, and one in particular that I'd like to perhaps address is the question of the FAR, and it was noted by one of the adjacent owners. There initially we had intended for somewhat of a lesser square footage, but really the impetus for needing to expand that has been due to the COVID pandemic situation, and in looking at a lot of market trends, we have found that there's a very, very strong desire and need for some additional flexible space for people who are working from home, who are perhaps homeschooling, and intend or don't expect that to change anytime soon. And so that's been one consideration that's kind of pushed us in that direction. and something that we do believe is appropriate and necessary for these homes.
All right, thank you very much for the input. Yes, I know the whole paradigm of working is changing.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yes,
may.
Mr. Chairman, please.
Part of the thing that drives building these things, we looked at some homes several years ago, in another area near Hope Avenue, where it's different kind of argument was made to justify the amount of square footage. But the reality is that's what it takes to make profit on these homes. And yes, you can talk about COVID-19. This is a 1 in 100 year event. And yes, people are having to change their lifestyle, but these homes are going to last a lot longer than this pandemic or the cultural changes that are occurring. Yes, those cultural changes may occur and are occurring and could last for several years after this pandemic. But these homes are going to last a lot longer than us sitting on this board or any of us participating in this process. And once they're there, you can't take them back. So I'm not looking at that as a valid argument of why the FARs have to be bigger than 85%. Thank you.
Thank you. I also would like to add that this particular style of this home is very time specific too. It's not I don't consider this style to be timeless. I consider it to be a very popular style of our times. That isn't to say it's bad, but I have a hard time saying that this kind of style is timeless. But anyway, that's the excitement of architecture. Would someone like to entertain a motion, please? And this is for comments only. Thank you. Someone speak up, please. Jan?
Okay, well, so this is comments only, and here we go. So I feel that the idea to keep this development, the 6 homes, consistent in design is a great idea. I just don't think this is the right design for this neighborhood. I feel that this neighborhood is Hope Avenue, Connie Way, and our new Penn Place is what this neighborhood is, which is pitched roofs and more ranch style and smaller. I definitely feel that the FAR should be brought down to our guidelines of trying to keep it in 85%. We need to have more space between these homes, and the landscape plan needs to be more developed, and hopefully with more park-like plantings around, definitely drought tolerant. I think also we need to take into consideration lighting. And I know that the presenters mentioned solar panels. You can place solar panels in tile roofs, and they on a pitched roof, and they can be very well hidden when they're done right at the very beginning of the building. So I think that should be considered. I also think that your bioswales and water retention on this site needs to be considered and presented when you come back to the full board.
Thank you, Board Member Farrell. Do I have a second, please?
Mr. Chair, before we get a second, could I get the maker of the motion to also include language that we would like, when this project returns, sufficient information for the board to understand privacy issues between the adjacent properties, please? Thank you.
Yes, please add that in, Mary, to the notes.
And Mr. Chair, board members, Mr. Ziegler sent a message saying, can you mention the building heights as well in the motion?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. That we would like to see them brought down below 25 feet if possible. And yeah, brought down. So there's the motion.
All right, thank you. Do I now have a second? Jonathan, second. All right, thank you, Jonathan. May I have a roll call, please? Uh-oh.
All right, this is Mary. I will go ahead and take the roll call vote. We have Chair Miller,
Yes?
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Board Member Ziegler. And for the record, Mr. Ziegler's thumbs up signals an approval, so the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 2. Item is for concept review. It's 229 San Clemente. Proposal to demolish an existing one-story, 1,334 single-family residence and 2-car garage and construct a new 2-story single-family residence with a basement and detached 2-car garage. Project includes new landscaping and hardscape in the front and backyard. A detached junior accessory dwelling unit is proposed under a separate permit. Project site is located on a 6,862 square foot lot in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the city's coastal zone. The proposed total of 2,884 square feet of development is 99% of the maximum required for the lot area ratio. No final appealable action will be taken at this hearing. Project requires neighborhood preservation findings. Do we have a representative for this project, please?
I believe we do, Mr. Chair, board members, and staff also has brief comments prior to the review. Just to clarify, the agenda does state that the proposed garage is detached. In fact, it is attached. That is an error. So the garage will be an attached garage. And I believe that's the only comment I had on that. And I just promoted the applicant to a panelist. So Ms. Grinnell, if you can hear me, go ahead and click on your webcam and mic.
Good evening, board. Nice to see you all.
Hi.
Hi. I am, my name is Sarai Grinnell, and I'm going to be presenting the project at 229 San Clemente. Ted, could we start with the photos of the site, which is the photo file there? So this project is located in the Marine Terrace neighborhood on the Mesa. It's there's an existing approximately 1,200 square foot house that is right there in that area. You can and important to see in this image is the orientation of the lot. So north is up, obviously. As we're looking through the plans, plan north is sort of angled to the side. We can go ahead and look at the next photo. This is just a map of the photos for your own reference. We can move on to the next. So the photo with the car is the existing house. You can see there's actually a slope down the site. So the neighboring lot to the right is approximately 3 feet higher than the neighbor to the left. So that's something to note as we're looking through the drawings. We can move on to the next photo. The bottom one's just across the street. So these are some close-ups of the house. So there's actually a retaining wall and the house is raised a bit. So there's about a 3-foot slope in the driveway as well. We can go to the next slide. So you can see that the neighborhood, it's a typical Marine Terrace tract house. It has very much the vernacular of the 1950s ranch houses, several different floor plans. And as many of you know, that the houses in the neighborhood have been changed over time. So there's lots of different styles. But we really want to keep with the vernacular of the ranch style home as we move into this project. We can go to the next slide. So this is just views looking down the street each way. So it's a really pretty tree-lined street, very, very neighborhood-like. And keep going. These are just views along the side yard, so you can see the greenery in between the lots right now. Next slide. And this is the existing backyard. So just, you know, it's a very kind of typical rectangular lot, pretty flat except for the front. Next, I think that is it for the photos. Oh, and there's the existing house. So if we could just go to the plans then next. So this is the site plan of what we're proposing. And if we could just zoom into the actual site plan. Essentially, the house is, what we're proposing is a 1-floor section that has the kids' bedrooms and the living space, and then a 2nd floor master suite over the garage. We can go to the next slide and we can get more into the specific layout and design of the house. That's the survey. We can go to the next, which is just the demo plan. Part of the project, we're proposing a basement, which is not included in the FAR and not included in the overall design since it's underground. That is going to be a rec space. So you can see that's outlined in the dashed line there. Okay, next slide. Keep going until 2 more pages. Okay, so this is the basement plan. So this is all underground and not visible from the street, which is basically a big rec room, TV room, storage, that type of thing, and able to increase the amount of space that they have to use on the property. We can go to the next slide as well. We can go to the first floor plan. Great. So this is the first floor plan. You can see there's the garage on the lower right. One of the main goals of the house is really to bring the living space out to the backyard. So when you walk into the house, there's like a grand entryway, a grand hallway that takes you back to a living space that's facing the backyards. The kids' bedrooms are along the hallway there. They're identical. And then you can see as you walk down the hall, there's a powder room, and then there's actually a side beach entrance. So that gives access to the laundry room, back at entrance to the kitchen. It also just creates a little bit more inside-outside flow for the use of the house. The kitchen, dining, living is one big open space. The dining room will open up into the backyard. The ADU is part of separate application through the Coastal Commission right now. We can go on to the next floor plan. So this is the second floor plan. So we're really trying to minimize the bulk of the building by just putting the master bedroom on the second floor and keeping the rest of the living spaces on the ground floor. The master bedroom has minimal windows to the side yard to increase the privacy of the neighbors. There is a deck that goes off the front. That deck should have an ocean view for them, but not impeding on any privacy issues with their neighbors. So that space is also really pushed towards the southern side of the property, also to not to create any solar or shadowing issues with the neighbors. So any shadows from that second floor structure will actually go down onto the to their own house and not create any dark areas for the neighbors themselves. So. And you can see the way the house is laid out is very much based on these gable roof structures. So there's the bedroom gable, there's the main living gable that runs perpendicular along the back, and then the master bedroom upstairs will also have its own gable roof structure to keep it really simple and sort of stacked and kind of really in keeping with the neighborhood and the simplicity of the ranch style houses that are in the surrounding areas. We can go to the next page, which is the roof plan. So you can see that gable roof as it goes down. And you can go on to the next, which is the first elevation. So here you can see the front elevation and the what I was talking about, the two gable roofs. That's where it says A, that's the front entryway. So that is the main entry that's sort of trying to create a covered and sort of welcoming area in between the structural parts of the house. We'll talk about the materials as we get into the rendering pages. We can slide down to the back elevation. Okay, so this is the side elevation. So you can see that is the beach entrance along the south side of the house. Again, that's the master suite above, the living area behind on the left-hand side. We can go to the next page. So the west elevation there shows the back structure. So again, really keeping a very simple gabled structure with minimal overhangs and doors that open up into the backyard. And then the last elevation there on that page is that is the north elevation. So that shows the kids' bedrooms, the side of the house with the fireplace, and the master bedrooms above. And I think that is really it on this package. And then if we can just go to the rendering package, these are the ADU elevations.
There we go.
So you'll see if we can zoom into that front view there, the east elevation. So that's showing the structures. So again, really keeping in the vernacular of the neighborhood, the gable roofs. We're looking to really create a timeless and elegant material palette by using a stained or a more natural but clear stains wood siding, as well as a stone cladding on the garage and on the landscape walls. The landscape, which we do not have a fully developed landscape plan yet, but the goal is to really use sustainable and drought tolerant plantings. And there are smaller trees that are being removed in the front here, one palm tree. So just replacing them with some additional significant trees. And then you can see the second floor deck on the left-hand side there. The bottom view is just a little bit more of an angle, so you can see a little bit more how it looks as you're walking down the street. And if you can just zoom out, and I can look at the material palette there. So on the right hand, you can see an example of the wood siding. So we're looking at using like a vertical wood siding and a dark bronze fascia and flashing and gutter system. And then you can also see the stone that we're looking to use. So using something like a gray stone with some natural tints. And so you can see a sample of that there on that lower wall. So something in a way that has a bit of a very classic and elegant palette, but also has a bit of a modern edge to it. Other materials that we're looking at using are permeable pavers, integrating concrete pavers as we need them, but allowing them to be a little bit more tan, keeping with the asphalt shingle roofing, which is just very common in that area, and in keeping with the house itself. And some areas will have like the side, and actually it's just the side entry, the beach entry would have a light colored stucco material. We can go to the next page here. So these are the back views. You can see there, view one is the side entry, which has an additional door both into the laundry room straight ahead and to the kitchen to the left. So really allowing the sort of lifestyle of living on the mesa, the indoor-outdoor flow to happen with this space, as they come back from the beach, or coming from their car, the garage. It's easy to just kind of go out into that space as well. And we can go to the view right below that. So these views are the views of the backyard. So again, the back of this house opens up onto the yard, the ADU in the background, and just again, creating a very open space that has very indoor-outdoor flow and allows the rooms to be used both inside and as you go outside, that we have a really big outdoor room there. We can go to the next. So that's just a view looking from the other way. Again, it's a very simple structure, so it's pretty similar from both directions. And then the wider view to the right of that just shows the overall look of the house from the backyard. And then if we just go up on that slide there's some additional materials to look at. So again, the bronze style gutters, bronze pathway lighting, an example of the windows and doors that are being used, a really simple kind of traditional style window. And also just the cedar wood fencing, which a lot of it is existing now, and using steel and wood and metal railing system in the front deck. Okay, and I think we can go to the next page. So these are the street views, and there's also some axonometrics. So these views show the house in relationship to the neighboring properties. We are, pushing the FAR to 99%, but it is definitely not the largest house in the neighborhood. There are a lot of houses in this area that have gone larger. I think, the house is very much in keeping with the neighborhood, and a lot has been done in the design to really minimize the bulk of the house, to make it feel broken up, and also really match the style of the neighborhood, while at the same time creating a very timeless house and a material palette. So you could see the house here. The lower silhouette view really shows you the scale and size is very much in keeping with the two neighboring houses and a lot of the developments that have been happening in the neighborhood. And then if we just go down to the axonometric views below, you can see, which really just give you a sense of the design and the way in which the roofs are laid out to really keep it simple, both in structure and layout, and in some ways sort of diagrams the use of the house, where you have the strip of the kids' bedrooms on the ground floor, the living roof that goes across the other way, and then the master suite over the garage and laundry room. And you can see also with these is some of the areas that are going to be designated for landscaping. So again, that front yard area there in the front, there's also a large plant here in front of those bedroom areas, and then there's obviously the side yards and the large backyard that will be able to be developed more in our next presentation. And I think I covered most of it. I think that's it.
All right, thank you. Ted, did we get any public feedback?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And at this time, we'd like to open the floor for public comment. If you would like to give verbal public comment on this project, now is your opportunity. Go ahead and click the raise your hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. I only see one attendee in the audience. No hand is raised so far. So I just asked Mary if we have any written public correspondence for this project.
Thank you, Ted. We did not receive any written public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you, Mary. And still seeing no hands raised, so I believe we can move it to questions from the board. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go down the list here and see. Board member Harold, do you have any questions, please?
Yeah. Can you tell me the size of that deck? What's the square footage of the deck upstairs?
If we, let's see, I don't know offhand. I think it's about 8 feet by 22 feet. So I'm guessing about 100. If we go to, yes, there we go. It's 7 feet by 22 feet. So it's about 140 square feet.
Okay. And what's the distance from the property line to the house on the property line on either side?
The setback is 20 feet in the front and then 6 feet on the side yards. Some places it's actually a bit more, but the planning side yard is 6 feet. So at the narrowest is 6 feet and probably widens to 7 feet, just based on the lot angles.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Motisha, any questions, please?
No, at this time, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Richards, any questions, please?
Just one question, and I might sound foolish for asking. I'm not an architect by trade, but is there a reason that the roof doesn't have overhangs on the sides? Is that just kind of like a styling?
Yeah, it's an aesthetic, basically. Looking at ways to keep with the vernacular of the sort of traditional ranch style house, but creating a bit more modern feel. So creating something that feels a bit more like a modern ranch house that, and by removing the overhangs, it really helps kind of make it feel more now than then. Not a better way of putting it. So yes, it's a stylistic choice.
Okay. And then just from looking at the plans that I have access to here, it doesn't look like there's a developed landscape plan at this time.
No. I mean, our goal right now is to get feedback, and then we will come back with a developed landscape plan.
Okay. I think that answers my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Sweeney, your questions, please.
Oh, yes. Let's see. Location of trash on the site plan. Where do you intend to put trash?
We plan to put that, if you looked at the site plan, so we're planning to put that in the backyard, creating some sort of enclosure based on, if we go to the first page there. So right now, we have it in the backyard there, sort of set off to the side, which would be kind of a utility storage area there.
Oh, down there. Okay. Sorry.
Really, making sure we pull it back out of the sight line and the side yard and into the backyard.
And then the plate heights from floor to floor are generally what?
In that first floor section where the kids' bedrooms are along the upper side, north side, that's at an 8.6 plate height. And then the first floor living space, we pushed it up slightly to 9.6. And then on the second floor is also at 8.6.
Okay, thank you. And then, Ted, I know I may have asked this question before. I was out looking at the site on Saturday. I didn't see a yellow noticing sign. Is that not happening because of COVID-19?
Board Member Sweeney, that's correct. In fact, the city did very recently start requiring those signs, I believe, just prior to or just after this project was noticed. So they will be required from here on out, but some projects that were in the queue, prior to about this time, we weren't requiring the yellow noticing sign.
So, and when a project has an ADU, do they get a yellow and a white sign?
That's my understanding. ADUs require white signs, and a project that requires mailed noticing for the municipal code also requires a yellow sign.
But in this case, this did get a mail notice, right, to the 10 closest homes or whatever it is?
This did get a written public or a mailed public notice, yes.
Okay, thank you. That was all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. So Jonathan texted me because I take it he can't speak. I'm not sure we can, I'll just say it and see what the comment is. Not sure how the ADU can work on this property because the lot is so tiny. But I don't know if that's our purview or.
Do you want me to respond?
Chair Miller.
Just wait, let him respond first, because I don't think we can. Let's ask that question.
Chair Miller, board members, that's correct. The accessory dwelling unit would not be in the purview of the SFDB.
So there you go. It's off our purview. I, at this time, have no questions, so I'm going to move on to comments. Board Member Farrell, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So first of all, I think your design and your materials are I think, very nice and in keeping with the neighborhood. I am very concerned with the size of the house and an ADU on it. So the house is already at 99% FAR, and now you're adding an ADU, which isn't part of, we can't look at that. But the house, I feel, should be kept at our guidelines, which is 85% FAR. And the parking is really a challenge on that street, and then you're adding an ADU, so that's going to be more car. I think it's going to be challenging. Anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you. Board Member Motisha, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I agree with Jan. I think the ADU dictates that the house is maybe a little too big. We should bring the FARs down some. The house is in keeping with the neighborhood and our guidelines. I walked around and looked at several of the houses in the area, and a lot of them are getting remodeled, and they're looking with gables like this. I'll save that for my comments. Yeah, thank you.
Well, these are your comments.
Well, these are the comments. Are these the comments?
Yes.
Yeah, the comments.
I think the house is in keeping with our guidelines. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Board Member Sweeney, comments, please.
Yeah, comments. One is yes, I agree. The architectural style is very handsome. And the issue of ranch style overhangs and no overhangs, this is more of a salt box sea ranch approach where there are no overhangs. Typically ranch houses do have overhangs, so that's the way I look at it. But I think it's handsome. I think the architecture approach is appropriate to the neighborhood. And yes, if you look at that street, there are a lot of two-story houses, some of which this board approved and reviewed, and several which were built prior to the existence of this board, which is why this board exists, because of this neighborhood to a great degree. And I do believe that the FAR has to be at 85%. Because, what happens next is the house to the right and left will come back at some point. They're going to want 2 stories. The one to the right may be a complete tear down and a redo at some point in its future. And so we're going to get these houses packed in here. And I think they do need to stay at 85%. So I think that's not to say that the floor plan laid out can't happen. I think they just need to get sucked in. If you could suck out the square footage and leave the plan exactly the way it is, fine. The 15, we have a guideline on page 71. They have guidelines.
Pardon my interruption, Board Member Sweeney, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sweeney, you're cutting out a little bit. If you could repeat that last maybe 10 seconds or so of what you said. Thank you.
Okay, let's try it again. We have a guideline booklet on page 71 in, which is the copy I have, starts the discussion of decks that are on second levels like this one. And typically the guideline says decks won't be approved within 15 feet of the side yard or the property line. And in fact, there's a drawing in here of a condition exactly like you've designed, showing a full deck over the garage, which is discouraged. So I think we need to find a way to address that. At the moment, I don't think I can support the location of the deck as it's laid out. The other thing that might be helpful is the gable end on this second floor is a little intrusive. I don't mind the plate heights that have been described, but maybe that could be lessened by creating a shed roof over the deck. using the same language and material that's been introduced to the project. That might help a little bit. So I think those are my comments. In general, I think, you know, the approach is appropriate, certainly the landscape, so forth and so on, but the house needs to get smaller, down to 85% FAR, and we need to have to deal with the location of that deck up on the second floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan, do you have anything you'd like to communicate? There.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I'm sending Mr. Ziegler a webcam request.
Sometimes you type, did you type something?
And Mr. Chair and board members, yes.
All right. I think pretty much everyone has pretty much said what I need to say. I have no comments. So would someone like to... Who skipped? Who did I skip?
You skipped me.
Oh, Robert. I'm sorry, Robert. Do you have any comments? I apologize.
No problem. Yeah, I want to say that I support the project in general. I think that the choice of materials and the architectural styling, like it's really fitting for the neighborhood. I think that some clever introduction of landscape to the front of this house could really work well with it. That you know, it is a pretty big home, and there's not a whole bunch of landscaping in front of it in the way that it's proposed at the moment. And these neighborhoods, a lot of people have pretty clever use of their front yards as kind of like a front yard living space. So I would encourage the applicant to consider that. You know, how do they engage with the neighborhood with the front of their home other than with the big deck? I think the deck in this rendering looks nice because it has a little tree on it, and so I don't know, is there a clever way to introduce some planting up at that level? I think it kind of helps to work with the layout of the home. And I think that's my comment. So I'm generally in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think everyone has spoken. Would someone please entertain a motion? Guys are so shy.
Mr. Chair, is this comments only?
Yes.
Comments only. I'll make a motion.
Right.
That the board in general is supportive with the architectural style that's been introduced and the palette of materials that is being suggested. On the next visit, the board would like to see a preliminary concept landscape plan, would encourage the applicant to consider how the front yard is used to engage with the neighborhood. The board would like a second look at the deck area off of the second floor master bedroom so that it adheres to the 15-foot setback requirement or guideline that's in our standard set of guidelines. That the designer might consider an element that would diminish the impact of the gable end at the street elevation of the second floor. That the applicant return with a project design that's 85% FAR for the main home. That would be my motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can second that.
Okay, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. This is Mary. I will go ahead and take the roll call vote. We have Chair Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Board Member Ziegler. All right, and for the record, Board Member Ziegler's hand raise is an approval, and so the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our last item, right on time. Wow. 2232 Stanwood Drive, concept review. Proposal for alterations to the existing residence, including new siding, doors, windows, skylights, 2 Juliet balconies, and a standing seam metal roof. Project includes a new rolling driveway gate, a new pergola, and hardscape alterations consisting of replacing all existing flagstone with colored concrete slab on grade and construction of new steel painted beds at the east facade. Also proposed under separate permits are a new swimming pool and spa at the south side of the house and ground mounted solar collectors. No final appealable action will be taken at this hearing. Project will require neighborhood preservation findings and hillside design district and slope lot findings. Hello, Mr. Brown and Dave Winnick, I believe, are here to represent the project.
David Brown and Barry Winnick.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
If you'd like to go through the project, that'd be great.
Okay, let's begin with PDF sheet 2. Or existing context photos. These include both street view from Stanwood Drive and Orizaba Road. As you can see, very little of the site and the project is visible from the street due to the hedge that's mostly at the perimeter of the entire property and dense vegetation on the site. Also, the context photos show the existing house, 40-year-old facade showing its age. Also, the condition of existing hardscape immediately adjacent to the house, which we're proposing to replace. If we move on to PDF page 4, this is the existing site plan, which depicts most of the hardscape being removed. The existing hardscape, as mentioned, is largely flagstone set on the ground and is becoming a tripping hazard for the owner. The existing asphalt driveway will be patched, and then we're proposing to apply a chip seal topping. If we continue to PDF page 5, this is the proposed site plan showing our new hardscape, which is colored concrete, proposed swimming pool and spa off the south side of the house, and the location of the proposed entry gate 20 feet off the property line at Stanwood Drive. And the conceptual elevation here that we're looking at, proposing a rolling gate constructed from Corten steel plats, spaced and left to naturally oxidize and patina. We can move on to PDF page 8. Proposed floor plan. This depicts in larger scale the proposed hardscape pool and spa. We're also proposing 2 new fences or screens. Number 1 would be located adjacent to the garage underneath the existing oak tree. We're going to utilize that to screen existing utility entrances. And the second screen between the existing driveway and backyard landscaping is to separate those 2 areas. If we could move on to Oh, and these two screens that are proposed match the Corten steel proposed entry gate in construction and details. If we could move on to slide number 12, existing elevations. So our goal here is to make minor edits to the existing structure, clean up the architecture, which include removing a shed-like appendage that shows up just to the right of the garage door. Number 2, removing the deep overhang on the south elevation. It currently blocks out too much sun. And number 3, we've got some sloped exterior windowsills at the upper level on both the east and west elevations. We're looking to replace these sloped wood sills with small Juliet balconies with cable rail guards. We can move on to slide number 13, proposed elevations. If we could zoom in on the west elevation, lower right. Here we can see on the left our proposed Corten steel fence, which will screen utilities. And to the right of that, at the upper level, the proposed new Juliet balcony. So each secondary bedroom would have a door accessing this balcony and an awning above this for sun control. And continuing further to the right on this elevation is the proposed pergola, which will replace the deep overhang we're hoping to remove while still providing sun control. If we could zoom back out into the east elevation above. Again, on the left, here's our proposed pergola. And new Juliet balcony on this elevation at the upper level. Same condition, removing an existing wood sloped sill, creating a little balcony. And below that, we're introducing Corten steel once again in planters to help integrate the house within the landscape. The house now appears kind of plopped in place, like it just landed there. So we're hoping to integrate and naturalize the house in the landscape. If we can zoom back out and have a look at the south elevation, the lower left. Here we show the new swimming pool and spa being proposed. These walls will receive plaster finish to match the house. And additionally, we will, our landscape architect, Guillermo Gonzalez, is present, and he will talk about planting against these plaster walls. Above that is our pergola on the south side, replacing the deep overhang. And to the right of that is our proposed steel planters and steps, landscape steps. And zooming back out once again to the north elevation, looking to replace the garage door with an aluminum and frosted glass unit. And to the right is the return of our proposed Corten screen, screening the utility entrances. And we can go ahead and zoom back out. Our proposed materials for the exterior are a new standing seam metal roof. We're in high fire area. Color would be a dull gray, darker gray. Windows and exterior doors will all be replaced. We'll be using a black anodized aluminum frame. The wood siding we see is a wood composite product that is ignition resistant. And the plaster is basically replacement plaster where we have existing plaster. We'll put on a new finish coat in a lighter warm gray color. We can continue to PDF page 15. Typical exterior details. So the sections on the right depict the proposed Juliet balcony and cable railing with typical door and window jamb details and rake overhang detail for the metal roof. On the left side of the page shows the proposed steel and wood pergola off the side of the south side of the house. The structure will be steel painted with wood infill slats that you see here. Just as a side note, we're not changing floor areas or adding to bulk of the structure or FAR. If we can move on to page 16, this is conceptual landscaping, and if Guillermo Gonzalez, landscape architect, is present, he can take over for his portion of the work.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, good. So Guillermo Gonzalez, I'm the landscape architect for the project. We are, the landscape is minimum. It's just addressing the areas that are being disturbed by the construction and the changes along the outside. So going from the main entrance to the new entrance, so we are adding some hedges to match what's there now, the road. So we're adding hedges in the agaves and aloes on both sides of the entrance.
Pardon my interruption, Mr. Gonzalez, pardon my interruption. You're cutting out a little bit. I don't know if that last maybe 10 to 20 seconds was heard. So if you could please repeat that, hopefully the connection's a little clearer now.
Okay, let me see. So I was talking about the main entrance. There's a new gate added. So what we're doing is keeping, adding new hedges to match existing hedges, as you can see in the plan. And then we keeping the existing agaves and aloes that are there and complementing that with some additional agaves that are being relocated from areas that are being taken by the pool area. We also adding a couple of new agave americana on either side of the entry to highlight that area. As we move into the property, the area that we are landscaping, it's already have a lot of succulents in place. So we're gonna preserve as many of them as possible. And just gonna add where it's required. So that's true around the entire property. Along the entry, we adding some chondropelon right at the entry of the property, and some grasses to help, some native grasses to help mix that into the natural landscape. So the raised planters, a couple of raised planters along the side, we adding, there's already a large euphorbia cactus in there. So we're complementing that with a different species of euphorbia. And some, oh, how can I move that? Sorry. Some euphorbias, and also adding some California fuchsia on those planters. But otherwise, that's generally the landscape. We're keeping it all natural and native, drought tolerant, and preserve as much as what's there now as possible. The second page shows the plan palette that we're proposing for those areas in more detail, some photographs. We also adding an oak tree to complement. There is a large tree, oak tree at the entry that we'd like to balance that with adding another oak tree along the front entrance. And that could be seen on the previous page. It's marked as new oak, right there. So with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, well, applicants, if you could please confirm whether that concludes your whole presentation.
That does conclude, yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, we can open it up for public comment now.
All right. So if anyone would like to speak, or Ted will guide you.
All right, and just to let you know, I don't see any attendees in the audience, but just for anyone watching, now is the opportunity for a verbal public comment for this project. So the instructions are on screen. You just need to click your raise hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. I still don't see any attendees in the audience, and I'd just like to ask Mary if we received any written correspondence.
Sorry about that. We did not receive any written public correspondence for this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. And Mr. Chair, back to you.
All right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board. I will go down the list for anyone who has any questions. Board Member Farrell, do you have any questions, please?
I do. Dave, would it be possible to see a picture of what this Cortain steel that's going to be used for the gate and the planters and the fencing? Do you have a photograph of that by any chance?
Not presently, but we can submit one for sure. Yeah.
That would be helpful to me. Thank you.
Can I help you answer that? This is Barry. So there's 2 buildings in town, Ms. Farrell, that you can see that. One is our building, which is a Corten building. It just happens that we're not proposing corrugated in this case. Our building's corrugated. And then SB Cast, which is just up the street on the on the west side of Garden Street, also is Corten steel.
Okay, thank you. I know both of those, so that puts that at ease. Okay, and what about what material do you plan to use for the awning over those Juliet balconies?
Only one Juliet balcony has a proposed awning, and we would be looking at stainless steel.
Would that be matching the standing seam roof, or?
No, the standing seam roof will be a dull gray, dark gray.
Okay, and then this over the steel over the Juliet balcony will be what color?
Stainless color.
Oh, it's stainless steel. Oh, okay. Stainless. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Motisha, do you have any questions, please?
Not at this time. No, I do not.
Thank you. Board Member Richards, questions, please.
I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Sweeney, questions, please.
Yeah, just a couple. Are you required to do a tier 2 or tier 3 stormwater on this project? Do you know yet?
Yeah, we are underway with tier 3 design.
Okay, so the paving on the driveway, is that permeable pavers, or how are you dealing with that, or do you have to deal with that?
We're not dealing with it. It's existing asphalt that we will repair a few areas and then top the entire thing with new chip seal.
Okay, and then out at the gate, are you going to have any exterior lighting and a street number, or how have you thought about how you're going to handle that yet?
Conceptually, yes, we will have a light and address numerals.
Because I've noticed some folks that are doing this fairly contemporary approach to gates, they're including a fairly prominent number you can see one down at the circle down at Salinas and APS. That's interesting. Okay, that was all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Jonathan, do you have anything you'd like to say? Let me see. Oh yes, your thing's blinking. Let's see what you say. Okay, does creatine steel match any other colors on the house? Or whatever you call that, Corten.
All the Corten steel will be related to the landscape and our few proposed landscape structures. The reason we're keeping it off the house is because as it naturally oxidizes, when it gets wet, it will drip and stain surfaces. So we want to keep that away from the finishes of the house.
Okay. I at this time have no questions. So let's move on to comments. Board Member Farrell, comments, please.
So I think I'm very supportive of these changes for this house. I know this area well, and I think that it's a very large lot, and you're not going to see a lot of these things from the street. Usually I am not in support of glass garage doors, but in this case, because it's so far back and the driveway is going to be behind a gate, I'm okay with it. I also think that the standing seam metal roof is appropriate, and I think that the changes you've proposed to this house definitely are going to make it a nicer looking property. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Board Member Motisha, comments, please.
I agree with everything that Jan just said. Other than that, I don't have any comments. I think it's an improvement. This house was built probably 30 years ago, and if not farther back, and it just needs some sprucing up, and the proposals you've done will acquire that. We'll do that. Very nice. Thank you. I will support it.
All right, thank you. Board Member Richards, any comments, please?
Yeah, I agree with Jan and Joe. I think that they're making some great moves for this house. I appreciate the integrating some planters around it so it doesn't feel like the house is just kind of plopped on the set. I think it's great. The selection of planting for the landscape plan seems appropriate to the site and the styling of the home, and so I am in support of it, and I think it'll look great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Sweeney, comments, please.
My comments are, I agree with all the previous, my colleagues, their comments. The one question I do have on the stainless steel being used in the canopy, we do have an ordinance in the city that prohibits reflective metal material on buildings. We sometimes run into that when we get a discussion about standing seam roofs. That's not the case in this project, but just to be careful, you might check that piece of the ordinance to make sure you don't get caught up somewhere in the process. Other than that, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Ziegler, in comments, let's see what you have to say. I agree with Jan's comments. Okay, thank you. The only question I had, what was it? Oh, Mr. Motisha, make it more like 45 to 46 years ago.
I guess I'm younger than I thought I was.
Yeah, time flies too fast. I have no comments. I agree with my fellow board members. Would someone like to entertain a motion, please? And this is for comments only.
Yeah,
I believe.
I can do that, Brian. So
Thank you.
I feel that we can give this design positive comments. We appreciate the kind of facelift that you're giving this house. And I think that the color scheme and palette is very nice. I like the Corten steel for the gate and the planters and also the fencing materials. I think the little Juliet balconies are a nice touch, and the additional landscaping that you're going to do is also very appropriate. I'm also in support of the glass, the frosted glass garage doors. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Sweeney, that please check into the stainless steel and the reflectivity of that over the 1 Juliet balcony. And this can come back to the full board. And we'd also like to see your outdoor lighting and how you plan to illuminate the address on your front gate. And that's my motion.
Thank you. May I have a second, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that motion with a clarification from Ted. Ted, it sounds like we're close to wanting to give this project design approval. Do we state that in this motion, that we're ready to do that on their next visit?
Board Member Sweeney and Mr. Chair, yes, that would be appropriate if you do think that the project would be ready for project design approval at the next hearing. Please indicate so in the motion.
Okay.
I do see a message from the applicant as well that's requesting clarification on that. So if you could indicate that, please, that would be great.
Okay,
Great,
so
thank you, Fran.
please add that in, Mary, to the minutes and the notes that we see that this could be ready for project design approval at the next meeting, whenever they're ready, whenever the applicants are ready.
I'm agreeable as the seconder. And then to Mary, you all know, Mary, do you do ABR also?
Yes.
Oh, you should have watched her as the ABR struggled for a motion on the police station last week. You got a medal for having to sit through that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. As noted by the seconder, may I have a roll call, please? Mary?
Yes. All right. We have Chair Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Board Member Ziegler. All right, and Board Member Ziegler's hand raise is an approval for the record, and so the motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I believe that's the last item on our agenda. So I believe we can close out. Ted, anything more to be said?
Mr. Chair, board members, that's correct. That's the last item on the agenda today.
All right, I'd like to close the Single Family Design Board for November 23rd, 2020. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, buddy.